And thank you very much for your time this morning. Can we just start there? We do know that Parliament is now calling for public input on amending the Constitution to expropriate land without compensation. Will AfriBusiness be taking part in this public process?
Sure, we will most definitely be taking part. And I'd like to expand on that, but just a note as we start, you mentioned AfriSake or AfriBusiness as AfriForum's lobby group for business. This is incorrect. I know there's a journalist, Piet le Roux, who recently said this in an article, but we're an independent organization with an independent board. I'm the CEO, so we often work together with AfriForum, but we're an independent organization.
Okay, thanks.
On to your question of participation. Yes,
Mr. Le Roux, before you answer, just to say thanks for clarifying, just to confirm, and also for our news editorial team, AfriBusiness is an independent business organization, cooperates with AfriForum, but you are not part of AfriForum.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, fine. So let's get to the nub of the main issue that we're starting with. Will you be taking part in the parliamentary process?
Yes, we look forward to that. By the 31st of May, submissions has to be made to this commission on that has to investigate and report back to Parliament on expropriation without compensation and amending the Constitution. We will be making submissions. That the submissions will be wide-ranging. It will stretch from constitutional arguments to investigations of the economic implications for what is intended. And I think there are very important juristic or legal arguments to be made, non-constitutional, simply referring to treaties that might be implied if expropriation without compensation goes ahead. So there's much to be said. We will be making those submissions, and then we will look forward to proceeding for oral submissions after May.
I saw a report about where you are quoted as saying expropriation without compensation is theft. Why do you say that?
Yes, well, expropriation without compensation is indeed theft. So it's let's investigate the principle for a moment. If I come to you and I take something from you and I do not give you and I offer you anything in return, then that is taking something from you. You're not compensated, and that is what a thief does. Crime is a problem in South Africa, and that is the exact thing that happens when people come and steal people's stuff. Expropriation has a position in law, and we can debate the merits of that, but it is internationally accepted in many countries that governments may expropriate, but not expropriate without compensation. There should always be a fair compensation. So sometimes there are statutes that says for a public purpose, let's say a road has to be built or a bridge has to be built or something, then in many countries, including a country like the USA, it often happens that a court then says, yes, it's fine to expropriate a person for that property, but he has to be compensated. And that is not expropriation without compensation. That isn't theft. It might be right or wrong, but it's not theft. But to take something without compensating someone for it, well, that is theft.
So your position, therefore, I guess, in terms of submitting to Parliament will be you understand that governments can expropriate land, but it has to be done with compensation. Is that the nub of your submission?
Yes, at the very least it has to be done with compensation, and that compensation, our position is, has to be market related as well. And government has expropriated for a number of years now, and this government and governments before them in South Africa. Some of those expropriations were justified, some of them weren't. Many of the expropriations under the 1913 Land Act were unjustified, and that is why the restitution process is in place, which we support. And the restitution is to give land back that was taken from people unjustly. And for that, there may very well have to be expropriation. Most land claimants in the restitution process do not want land restored to them, but opt for compensation. But those are just the important, that's just to give you an illustration of why it's important that there has to be compensation for expropriation. Otherwise, it's by definition unjust.
Okay, what do you say as AfriBusiness to people who would argue that the bulk of the land in South Africa, especially after the 1913 Land Act, was taken forcibly from black South Africans, original owners of the land, without compensation?
So the most important landmark in the land restitution process is indeed the 1913 Land Act. That wasn't, there were times after that as well, and times before that. I mean, even before 1652, land was taken from people and given to other people in South Africa. So land expropriation has happened all through history. The process we're concerned with in South Africa is over basically the past century, returning what over this time frame was taken unjustly. So our position is and that is why there is a land claims court and a restitution process, is you investigate a land claim and you say, someone comes to the land claims court, makes a submission, say, this land was taken from me or my ancestors without compensating them or against their will. Even if there were compensation, it might still need to be restored. So our position is that any such case and any such claim is worthy of investigation, and if that investigation proves that the claimant has a point, then that land should be restored or the claimant should be offered compensation. And that is the land restitution process which we indeed support.
Okay, Mr. le Roux, before you go, you referred to an article earlier yourself when we started by Piet le Roux. I've seen that article, and there was a meeting that your organization had organized in Irene in Pretoria recently. And that meeting, according to Piet le Roux, seemed more about a sales pitch for helping to stop communists, like land reform is equated by some of your people who attended it as a communist thing, and that the meeting was more about safety and security rather than land reform. Very briefly, how do you respond? How have you responded to Piet le Roux's assertions?
Yes, I'm really surprised at Mr. le Roux's article. I'll be responding at length, and we'll even consider going to the press ombudsman, because just a few things. For example, just as a small thing, but it wasn't in Irene, it was in Centurion. Now, that's a small thing, but a more important thing. He made it look like I was speaking all evening about communism. Now, I didn't use the word communism in my presentation at all. I might have used it in response to a question right at the end where a member of the audience spoke about communism. But I redirected that question to what I think is more appropriate to discuss, which is socialism. So the current expropriation without compensation drive from government side and from the EFF side, as well as some related interventions in the market, is more, I think, aptly described by the concept of socialism. So Mr. le Roux's article really isn't a good benchmark for understanding what we did. Let me say why we have these information sessions. We're having them all across the country at the moment, and they're well attended. We offer our view on the matter of land expropriation without compensation. As you would understand, many people in this country are very concerned about that. Investors, normal, regular employees, because should this go through, and depending on how expansive it goes through, it could really wreak havoc in the economy. So it is an important matter. We think it's important to handle this in a level-headed and cool manner, and we present our assessment of the possibilities for this. We present our arguments for property rights, and we try to distinguish between proper restitution and land redistribution. We think redistribution is problematic and that it actually undermines property rights. We think restitution supports property rights and should be supported. So we try and make these distinctions, and we think we try and lift the level of public debate in this. Mr. le Roux didn't pick that up, and it's quite sorry that in the way he reported on the matter.
Thank you very much.